Iron Menace is a B&M dive coaster located at Dorney Park in Allentown, Pennsylvania. The ride opened in April of 2024 and tied a few world records, including the world's steepest dive coaster and the most inversions on any dive coaster. It's the first brand new coaster to be added to Dorney Park since Hydra the Revenge in 2005. The ride has a max height of 160 feet, a drop of 152 feet, a max speed of 64 miles per hour, a drop of 95 degrees, 4 inversions, and 2,169 feet of track. In this review, I'll be sharing my thoughts on this new for 2024 attraction, and what you should expect going into the ride. Iron Menace sits in the back of the park on the plot of land that used to be home to Stinger, which was a Vekoma inverted boomerang, just like in Vertigo at Kings Island. The ride was relocated from California's Great America, and only lasted about 5 years at Dorney Park. The plot of land has just been empty for the last 6 years, so naturally, it was going to be the first place we could expect some form of major attraction to be added to the park. Dorney has made multiple attempts to put a new coaster here, but the plans kept getting shut down. Finally, the plans got approved for a B&M dive coaster. It's the first dive coaster in the Northeast, which is a pretty major thing. Presentation-wise, this ride is definitely the best themed attraction at Dorney Park. The entrance plaza is pretty spacious, with a few bits of theming and a pretty impressive entrance sign. For those of you who don't know, the park is located in an area of Pennsylvania known as the Lehigh Valley, and there used to be a major steel factory called Bethlehem Steel, which you can still go to the abandoned factory to this day. So the coaster and area were themed to reflect the history of the steel industry in that area. There's some cool theming bits in the queue. The station looks phenomenal. There's even audio as you dispatch the station and while you're going up the lift hill. Overall, the presentation of this ride is impressive. I wouldn't say it's to the level of some of the other new areas at Cedar Fair parks, but it's definitely an improvement from what Dorney originally had. So let's get into the actual ride experience. When you board the train, you will notice the trains are 3 rows of 7, identical to Dr. Diabolical's Cliffhanger at Six Flags Fiesta Texas and the new for 2025 Wrath of Rakshasa at Six Flags Great America. Like I mentioned earlier, as you leave the station, there is some audio that plays of a creepy voice. Then you start to ascend the 160-foot lift hill. This lift hill is fairly steep and moves along pretty quickly. Once you reach the top, you get a gorgeous view of the park and the surrounding area. Then, you have the hold section over the 95-degree drop. After a few seconds, the train plummets down the 152-foot drop and reaches a speed of 64 miles per hour. In the back row, you will get some solid sustained airtime. I would say this is the best first drop in the park if you sit in the back row. After the drop, you pull up into a massive Immelman. The pull-up usually makes me gray out a bit. It's a pretty intense moment of the ride, but there is more to come. Next is a 0G roll, which I personally find to be the weakest element of the ride. It's not fast enough to be whippy, but it's not really slow enough to give hang time. It's just a very graceful inversion. But after that, you enter the tilted loop, which is one of the most intense moments I've ever experienced on a dive coaster. And it continues into the next element, which is a corkscrew. During the summer, there were some rides I got where I would gray out from the beginning of the tilted loop all the way through the corkscrew. It's a very intense moment of the ride, and I can understand that there were some people that thought it was a little too much. After the corkscrew, the ride then hits a helix, which leads into the brake run. This helix is by far the roughest part of the ride. There's a major jolt before it twists into the brakes. It seems like it's a manufacturing error of some sort. I've definitely noticed it's a little less rattly since opening day, but it's definitely still there. I wouldn't say it hurts, it's just a bit quirky. The unfortunate thing about this brand new coaster is that it's not the smoothest ride. It's honestly a bit concerning the path that B&M is going down. None of their new coasters seem to get good reviews in terms of how comfortable or smooth their coasters are becoming. Hopefully they can get it sorted out soon, especially with the new B&M dive coaster coming to Six Flags Great America. I wouldn't say Iron Menace is rough, but it's definitely not a smooth ride either. If you want the smoothest ride, sit in the front, but if you don't mind the rattle, sit in the back for a more intense experience. I personally don't mind the rattle, but I've heard a few complaints from the general public. In terms of where I rank it with other dive coasters, this is actually my second favorite dive, just behind Griffon at Busch Gardens Williamsburg, and just ahead of Yukon Striker at Canada's Wonderland. I prefer the airtime and comfortable restraints on Griffon, but I prefer Iron Menace's pacing over Yukon Striker. The thing I love most about Iron Menace isn't the intensity, but the pacing of the ride. It has no mid-course brake run, so the elements just hit one after the other, with no interruption. And each element hits pretty well other than the 0G roll. They all have pretty intense moments. It's just a very strong all-around coaster in my opinion. Overall, I think this is a major addition to Dorney Park's coaster lineup. It's created a ton of publicity for the park, and the crowds have been huge this year. Most people love it, but I can understand if someone finds it a bit too much or too uncomfortable. If they can somehow work on the rattle this ride has, it could be a home run. I'd definitely recommend you get out to Dorney Park and try this coaster if you haven't already. So what do you guys think of Iron Menace? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching this review, and I'll see you guys next time. If you'd like to support the channel even more, become a member and receive numerous benefits, such as watching all my videos the day before they release, access to my monthly top 25 coaster list, member shoutouts, and more. Thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you guys next time.